Greetings, viewers. Today, BMW is the only major motorcycle manufacturer from Germany, but it wasn't always like that. Germany is the birthplace of many interesting motorcycle brands. These include Dampfkraftwagen and Motorradwerk, Schopau, Sundab, and Simpson. And in the 1910s to 1930s, there were even more companies producing motorcycles. This trend was common throughout the global motorcycle industry, not just in Germany. In this segment, I want to introduce you to the history of Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union motorcycles. This is one of the oldest German motorcycle companies. At one point, Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union was the largest manufacturer of two-wheeled vehicles in the world. They created an interesting tracked motorcycle tractor for the Wehrmacht. The first person to reach a speed of over 200 miles per hour, that's 322 kilometers per hour on a motorcycle, did it on a Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union machine. Also, using one of this company's machines, the Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union Bison 2000 was built, a motorcycle with the largest single-cylinder engine. We'll talk about all this and much more from the history of the Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union Company today. You're on the Cross Moda channel. Enjoy watching. The Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union Company was founded by Christian Schmidt, together with Heinrich Stoll, back in 1873 in the town of Riedlingen on the Danube. At the time of its founding, it was called Mechanische Werkstätte zur Herstellung von Strickmaschinen, which translates as a mechanical workshop for the production of knitting machines. Soon the entrepreneurs went their separate ways, and in 1880 Schmidt moved the production facilities to Neckarsulm, a city located where the Somme River flows into the Neckar River, and renamed his company to Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union. At that time, Christian Schmidt proved to be a rather shrewd entrepreneur. He apparently understood well that the future belonged to mechanization of production and that his knitting machines would be in high demand. In the 1880s, the company experienced rapid growth, the machines were selling like hotcakes, and the business was expanding and developing. Christian died in 1884, and 2 years later his company caught the next trend and started producing bicycles. The first model was a penny farthing called Germania. At that time, the design and concept of the bicycle were undergoing radical changes. The roller chain enabled the creation of the safety bicycle. To be continued. The chain drive made it possible to install wheels of the same diameter on it. By the late 19th century, bicycles became very popular. Production increased, manufacturing improved, and prices fell. It became available not just to the wealthy, but also to low-income citizens. Schmidt's bicycle business really took off. His products were in such high demand that by 1892, the company completely stopped producing knitting machines in favor of bicycles. And it's not at all surprising that decades later, an internal combustion engine would be installed in a bicycle frame at the factory in Neckarsulm. This happened in 1901. That was when the first Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union motorcycle made its debut. This machine featured a single-cylinder, 4-stroke Zettel engine with 243 cc displacement and 1.75 horsepower. The frame, originally from a bicycle, was modified to fit the engine. The engine itself was mounted very low under the bottom tube. The motorcycle was produced until 1903. Initially, the motorcycles were just called Neckarsulm or Neckarsulmer Motorrad, but for foreign markets, the name turned out to be difficult to pronounce, and soon it was shortened to just Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union with the letters taken from the name of the area Neckarsulm. During those years, motorcycle production grew quickly, and Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union worked hard to keep up with competitors. In 1903, Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union started producing its own engines, and by 1904, 6 different motorcycle models were available to choose from. One featured a 2.5 horsepower, 500 cc V-twin engine. At Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union, they clearly understood the importance of having their products participate in races and the fact that this positively affected sales of their machines. Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union motorcycles were active in races, achieving many victories and setting several records. As early as 1905, the Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union Company created a specialized racing motorcycle with an engine displacement of 402 cubic centimeters. The British manager of the Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union Company, Martin Geiger, took 5th place on one of his motorcycles at the very first tourist trophy on the Isle of Man in 1907. I have a detailed episode on this race's history on my channel. Highly recommend watching. Here's a pop-up suggestion. In the following year, 1908 Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union rider Lees showed a speed of 109 km/h during a two-way run, which was declared a world motorcycle speed record. But at that time, world records were not officially registered yet. In 1909, Lingenfelders claimed another record near Los Angeles, showing a speed of 124 km/h. What motivated the Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union motorcycle to enter the American market, which promised significant profits? Setting records for 50 years was an important part of Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union's history. Wilhelm Hertz reached 339 km/h in August 1956 on the Bonneville Salt Flats. We'll discuss that in more detail later. Another important niche that Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union ventured into was three-wheeled cargo motorcycles. Their lineup was called Dry-Rad, and the first model debuted in 1903. The Dry-Rad was equipped with a single-cylinder, liquid-cooled engine that powered one rear wheel. There were two wheels in the front with a cargo container between them, and it was controlled by a steering wheel. From 1906 to 1908, the company produced the Zulmobile 4 Transport Dry-Rad truck, which had a 3.5 HP engine, with the engine above the front wheel and a 200 kg payload capacity. Zulmobile was unpopular, so the company soon began making full-fledged automobiles. Since 1905, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union began producing motorcycle sidecars, which could be attached to any motorcycle model. That same year, a very popular model with a 3-horsepower engine appeared, and in 1909, the flagship large V-twin with a displacement of 1 liter was introduced. Alongside the successful production of motorcycles, car manufacturing was gradually developing. In 1905, the first car was introduced, and just a couple of years later, several alternative engine options appeared, ranging from 1,300 cc to almost 4 liters. Soon, taxis and small trucks were also put into production. V-twin and Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine Union were highly valued abroad, especially in Britain, even with its strong motorcycle engineering tradition. Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine Union opened its first London sales office in 1905, quickly surpassing all expectations. In 1906, British motorcycle enthusiasts bought up all 22% of the motorcycles imported from Germany. They were Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine Union. A little later, the Germans would open a motorcycle factory in Britain to meet the demand. At the beginning of 1914, 1,500 people worked at this enterprise. But naturally, with the start of World War I, the enterprise was closed. During the war, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union supplied equipment to the German army, the Reichswehr. These included motorcycles and cars. Development slowed somewhat. The company focused on producing proven and reliable models that were needed by the military. After the war, the company accelerated the development of new motorcycle models, and despite the devaluation and the subsequent hyperinflation, it generally prospered. By 1922, production returned to pre-war levels, with about 3,000 people working at the factory. It is worth noting that during the 1910s and 1920s, the naming of Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union motorcycles was extremely primitive. There were machines with single-cylinder engines and V-twins. Here are some examples. The Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union, 8 horsepower, and the Neckar-Sulmer Strick Machine and Union, 350, 3.5 horsepower. Sometimes the names included the index S for sport or T for touring. The development of the 250cc overhead valve engine was started in 1925 by the chief designer of Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union engineer Otto Reeds. The engine of the factory racing motorcycle with a 250cc displacement, produced in 1926, 1927 developed 1315 horsepower and allowed speeds of up to 120 km/h. Reeds also redesigned the racing motorcycle models with distinctive two-cylinder engines. Since the mid-1920s, model naming began to change. The 251 model appeared, and this naming became typical for Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union in the 1930s. The first two digits showed engine size, the last digit showed cylinder count, 1 for 1 cylinder, 2 for 2. The top model at that time was the 502T, which was produced from 1924 to 1927. This luxury touring motorcycle was equipped with a 500cc V-twin engine, producing 11 horsepower and a 3-speed gearbox. In the post-inflation period, luxury vehicles were unpopular, and just 356 units of the 502T were produced. The factory in Neckarsulm, the first among German industrial enterprises, began using assembly line production technology. The automotive division grew in the 1910s and 1920s. In 1927, a separate factory was built for car production. But 2 years later, due to financial difficulties, Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union sold its car production. They would return to four-wheeled vehicles in Neckarsulm in 1958, introducing the compact car Prince, which later developed into a series of models. A crucial event was the move of chief engineer and designer Walter William Moore from Norton to Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union in 1929. The motorcycles of the German company soon began to look quite British. There were heated debates about this move. Moore's engineering work for Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union was often perceived as plagiarism of Norton technology. The Englishman worked at the German company for 10 years until World War II began. The motorcycles had a typical English appearance: a vertical cylinder, valve drive with a shaft, and bevel gears, an English gearbox assembled under license and shifted with the right foot, the shape of the tank, and so on. As part of these changes, the 201T model debuted in 1929, and 2 years later, its upgraded version, the 201TS, was released. The 199cc side valve engine boasted 4.5 horsepower, and the motorcycle could reach speeds of up to 65 kilometers per hour. During that period, there were also the 301T and 501T models with side valve engines, as well as their versions with the TS index. The oldest model in the side valve family was the 601. Also, in 1929, the model debuted. The 351OT, featuring a 350cc engine. A logical step in the development of the lineup was the appearance of a civilian motorcycle with an overhead valve engine. In the 1930s, the 2001 OSL model debuted, whose engine, with the same displacement, almost doubled its power to 8.5 horsepower. That year, the 251 OSL debuted with a 242cc 10 horsepower engine and several upgrades. Production continued until 1952. In the first half of the 1930s, 200cc motorcycles were extremely popular in Germany. This was due to the specifics of German laws. Vehicles with an engine capacity of up to 200cc were subject to minimal tax, and no driver's license was required to operate them. From 1934 to 1937, the Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union 201 ZD Pony model was produced. Unlike the other 200 models from Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union, it was equipped with a two-stroke engine producing 6.5 horsepower. The letters in the name stood for the following. Z meant a two-stroke engine, and D meant two exhaust pipes. In 4 years, 46,500 of this model were produced. In the family with four-stroke single-cylinder engines, there were models with a displacement greater than 250 cubic centimeters. For example, the 351 OSL with a 346cc 18 horsepower engine and the 501 OSL with 494 cc and 22 horsepower. The 501 OSL model was very fast, with a top speed of 130 km per hour. It was equipped according to the luxurious standards of its time and was considered the ideal option for installing a sidecar. The largest and most powerful Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union model in the 1930s was the 601 OSL. It was produced until 1939. It was a luxury motorcycle with a 562 cc overhead valve engine, producing 24 horsepower at 5,000 RPM. The abbreviation OSL stood for Overhead Valve Sports Luxury. The British Wehrmacht adopted the 601 OSL model. The Army version was equipped with a second seat, side bags, and an exhaust system painted black. In the Army, motorcycles were used for couriers and messengers, which made sense given their top speed of 135 km/h. Neckar-Sulmer strict machine. Union motorcycles designed by MURA were famous for their reliability, pulling power, low fuel consumption, and reasonable price. However, not all of Williams' designs were four-stroke. There were also several interesting two-stroke models. During the sharp decline in sales during the Great Depression, Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union developed a small power unit that could be installed on a bicycle. Debuting in 1931, the Motozome featured a two-stroke 63cc engine, producing 1 horsepower. It was mounted above the front wheel and drove it. The machine could accelerate up to 35 km per hour, which was more than enough for a design like this. The appearance of Motozome was a brilliant marketing move. A sturdy, inexpensive motorized bicycle designed for everyday use appealed to many people. Moreover, Neckar-Sulmer strict machine union offered both men's and women's versions of bicycle frames. The even more legendary two-stroke engine, called Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union, debuted at the 1936 Berlin exhibition. The Quick was equipped with a 98cc single-cylinder two-stroke air-cooled engine, a pedal drive, a two-speed handlebar-shifted gearbox, and was originally fitted with a pedal brake. A new feature, then, was that the Neckar-Sulmer strict machine Union Quick came in both men's and women's versions. It was the cheapest motorcycle in the world, and thanks to high demand, it made Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, along with Dampfkraftwagen. The Quick was produced from 1936 to 1953. A total of 235,500 units were produced during this period, with only minor design changes. The third two-stroke model was the Pony, which debuted in 1937. It was a full-fledged lightweight motorcycle with a 100cc 3-horsepower engine and a 3-speed gearbox. Except for a World War II brake, the Pony was produced through 1953. The vehicle was very popular, with about 250,000 of these lightweight motorcycles produced during its run. In 1936, the talented motorcycle designer Albert Roeder joined the Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union company. In addition to civilian vehicles, a family of racing motorcycles was built based on the 4-stroke single-cylinder models. These were machines with highly tuned engines and a maximally lightweight chassis design. The names of these models included the SS Index, which stands for Super Sport. These motorcycles helped Neckar-Sulmer strict machine and union re-enter national and international races. The top model was the 601 SS. Thanks to its strong torque, it was well suited for hill climb competitions. Tony Fleischmann proved this by winning first place in Germany's 1933 hill climb competition. The 601 SS was also used in sidecar motorcycle races. Hans Schumann and Hermann Bohm were German champions for 3 consecutive years, 1933 to 1935. Even after the war, for years, Neckar-Sulmer strict machine union motorcycles seriously competed with BMW in sidecar races. The 501 SS, 351 SS, and 251 SS also excelled in races. Since 1937, racing motorcycles with 350 and 500cc engines were equipped with a valve timing system with 2 camshafts, and the culmination of the development of pre-war sports motorcycles was this 350cc Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in union with a supercharger, 2 cylinders in line, and 2 overhead camshafts. This engine produced 60 horsepower. However, in the Tourist Trophy race, despite all their efforts, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in union was unable to push aside the motorcycles of the British company Norton. And now we've reached the period of World War I. iRacing had to be forgotten. The Wehrmacht became the main and essentially only consumer of Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in union's products. In addition to motorcycles, the company supplied bicycles and also manufactured aircraft parts. Several pre-war models were requisitioned for the Army, and Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine union kept producing equipment adopted for service. In particular, the 251 OSL, this reliable motorcycle, was favored by communications officers. Signalers and messengers also used the 501 and 601 OSL, as mentioned earlier. Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen. Union motorcycles with sidecars armed with machine guns were also available. In 1943, due to an aluminum shortage, since it was all used for aircraft, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union had to make engine parts from cast iron. The most unusual piece of equipment that Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union created for the Wehrmacht was a tracked motorcycle tractor called the Kettenkrad. And now we'll focus on it. In 1940, the company Neckar-Sulmer Fahrzeugwerke AG received an order from the Ministry of Armaments and the Army to develop a light vehicle. The motor tractor was intended to increase the mobility of infantry units, conduct reconnaissance, tow light artillery systems, and transport other military cargo. This order led to the Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union Kettenkrad HK-101 appearing in 1940. Interestingly, one of the main developers of the new vehicle was Heinrich Ernst Kniepkamp, later known for creating the running gear for the Tiger and Panther tanks. He developed and patented the concept of the half-track motorcycle back in the summer of 1939. This half-motorcycle, half-tractor, was equipped with an engine from the Opel Olympia car, a 1.5-liter inline 4, producing 36 horsepower paired with a 3-speed gearbox. Across rough terrain, the tracked motorcycle could move through mud and even swamps thanks to its low ground pressure. The weight was 1,235 kilograms. It could carry a load of 325 and tow trailers weighing up to 450 kilograms. In addition to the driver, it could carry 2 more people. The vehicle was mainly steered using an active differential of the tracks, whose brakes were cross-linked by rods to the fork of the front wheel. The motorcycle-type wheel mainly acted as a visual marker for movement direction. Thanks to its reliability and high off-road capability, Kettenkrad soon became widespread in all ground units of the Wehrmacht. But this design also had its drawbacks. The crew was not protected, the track width was narrow, and Kettenkrad was prone to tipping over on slopes and during sharp turns at speed, and in such a situation, the driver had almost no chance to leave the vehicle. By the end of World War I, to save aviation fuel, planes were no longer permitted to taxi to the runway on their own. Towing them to the runway became the job of the Kettenkrads, which often worked under serious overload. During the war, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union made 7,593 tracked motorcycles, and Steyr produced another 1,330. Also, in 1943, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union, as a further development, designed the heavy half-track motorcycle HK-102 with a more powerful engine and 5 seats. However, it was not adopted by the Wehrmacht and remained a prototype. After the collapse of Nazi Germany in May 1945, the few remaining operational Kettenkrads were used in civilian sectors, particularly in agriculture. After the war, Neckar-Sulmer Strick Maschinen Union and Steyr used leftover spare parts to build about 550 more Kettenkrads as agricultural machinery. Their production finally ended only in 1949. In addition, in the second half of the 1940s, the French company Babioli converted a number of captured Kettenkrads into regular tractors. The driver's seat was moved back and the front wheel was removed. 2 weeks before the surrender, the plant in Neckarsulm was bombed and partially damaged. But, as you know, it wasn't wiped off the earth. They were finishing Kettenkrads there. The Allied forces used the plant as a repair workshop, and by the end of 1946, production of bicycles and light pre-war two-stroke motorcycles, Quick and Pony, had already resumed here. The population of post-war Germany could afford very little, and at Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union they focused on simple, inexpensive, small displacement vehicles. Albert Roeder was appointed chief designer in 1947 under his leadership. Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union quickly increased its production volumes. The company's first post-war creation was a lightweight motorcycle model called Fox. Production began in 1949 with two versions, a 125cc two-stroke and a 100cc four-stroke engine. This vehicle was in high demand on the post-war West German market. Soon, sports models appeared. At the end of 1949, a contract was signed with the Italian company Innocenti to produce the Lambretta scooter under license. Initially, the assembly was done using imported Italian parts, but in 1951 they began producing them entirely in Germany. From 1950 to 1956, before Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union created its own Prima scooter, 117,000 units of the Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union Lambretta, Italian VSL, were produced. The interwar production peak for Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union came in 1938 when 62,619 motorcycles were produced. This figure was surpassed in 1950. 1951, the console with a 350cc engine debuted, and 100cc quick production resumed. Other sources say the Quick and Pony models were assembled from 1947 because of spare parts issues. The equipment still used pre-war designs. One innovation worth noting was the introduction of a telescopic front fork on the console. A year later, the second generation of the console and its 500cc version appeared. Eduard Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union Max's 1953 debut created a sensation. The uniqueness of this machine lay in its highly sophisticated overhead camshaft drive system. Instead of the traditional vertical shaft with a bevel gear, the 250cc Max engine was equipped with a drive using two connecting rods. This is how the mechanism looks in operation. The idea was like the connecting rods on a steam locomotive's driving wheels. Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union took this approach to avoid problems with adjustment during operation and wear of the bevel drive gears. Max also had an innovative monocoque frame made of stamped steel and a swing arm with a monoshock. Albert Roeder was a key figure involved in the creation of this innovation. The competent decisions of Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union, his management, and their in-demand lineup of machines allowed the company to become the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world by 1953. That year, 350,000 units rolled off the assembly line. And in that same year, another company bestseller debuted. The 50cc Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union quickly moped it became the most popular moped of its time. From 1953 to 1966, more than 1 million units were produced, of which 60% were exported. Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union didn't forget about racing and records. Despite all the hardships of the post-war period, the company kept its racing motorcycles, and it was decided that the machines should participate in races. For now, these were local West German events. Right after World War I, nobody wanted to see Germans at international competitions. Although the FIM banned supercharging in 1946, German races still used this technology until the mid-1950s. In 1947, Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinen Union machines won sidecar racing championships. In 1948, they reused the pre-war supercharged Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union. Wilhelm Hertz became German champion in the 350cc class on it. In 1949, engineers raised the engine's displacement to 500cc. Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine Union racer Wilhelm Hertz spent about a year bothering the engineers and the company's management that this 500cc bike with a full fairing designed by Reinhard Freiherr von König-Fachsenfeld was capable of making the brand famous in the field of absolute speed records. And he finally got his way. On April 12, 1951, Wilhelm set an absolute speed record of 290.322 km/h on the A9 Autobahn between Ingolstadt and Munich. In the streamlined Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine, Union Dolphin 1, under its fairing, was a 500cc engine boosted to 100 horsepower, running on methanol. And that was just the beginning. Hertz would set absolute records again in 53, 54, and 56. It was the first post-war speed record. Before that, the record belonged to Ernst Jakob Henne, who reached 279.5 km/h on a supercharged BMW. November 28, 1937. By 1953, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union's racing lineup featured modern motorcycles with 125 and 250cc engines and two-rod valve drive. Werner Haas won the German championship twice in these classes in 1953 subtitles. By then, Germany had joined the FIM and began receiving international competition invitations. Therefore, supercharging technology remained only for record attempts. The triumph of Teutonic genius happened in 54. Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union achieved their greatest victory in the tourist trophy race on the Isle of Man. Austrian Rupert Holhaus won the 125cc class, while German engineering dominated the 250cc class. Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union machines took first, second, third, fourth, and sixth places. Werner Haas was first. In the same year, Haas won the world championship in this class, and Rupert Holhaus claimed a similar title in the 125cc class. The highest achievement in the 350cc class brought Hermann Paul Müller the title of German champion. In 55, Müller became the world's first private motorcyclist to win the world championship on a Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union Sport Max in the 250cc class. However, the company's machines excelled off the circuit too. From 55 to 67, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union won 23 German off-road racing championship titles. In 1951, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine Union attempted to create a sports motorcycle with an inline-four engine supported by Italian company Gilera. However, the engine was unreliable and stayed at the prototype stage. In 55, after achieving success, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine Union withdrew from Grand Prix racing. At the turn of the 1940s and 1950s, motorcycle designer and racer Gustav Adolf Baum joined Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine Union. He also suggested streamlined record-breaking motorcycles, a concept that went beyond Fachsenfeld's ideas. Since the rider was positioned in the bike lying on his back, the height of the motorcycle was only about 72 feet and 5 inches. In 52, Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union signed a contract with Gustav and built the Baum 1 and 2 bikes, which were equipped with 50cc and 100cc engines, respectively. A little later, the 125cc Baum 3 and the 250cc Baum 4 appeared. In the end, these machines held 11 speed records. The 50cc reached a top speed of 196 km/h. The 100cc set a record at 222 km/h. The 125cc at 242 km/h, and the 250cc Baum 4 accelerated to 320 km/h. Its aerodynamic drag coefficient was so low that a 44 horsepower engine was enough to achieve these results. The Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union Dolphin 3, which was also fully streamlined, and had a 110 horsepower engine. Now we've reached Neckar-Sulmer Strick machine in Union's most famous record, 1956, A team of racers, mechanics, technicians, and engineers travels to Utah's Bonneville Speed Mecca. The lineup of Baumann Dolphin 3 machines took part in the record runs. The third Dolphin was extensively upgraded. Aerodynamics were perfected at the University of Stuttgart, and the supercharged 500's power was boosted to 110 horsepower. Interestingly, Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union used a rather unusual rotary supercharger, which was connected to Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union's later development of the Wankel engine. Hertz had a hard time with the record. During one of the practice runs, a gust of wind blew him off the track, and he hit a stroboscope with the body of the motorcycle. The fairing needed repair. On August 4th, the wind died down, and at 6 a.m., Hertz started, pushing the motorcycle to its limits. As Cycle magazine wrote, with salt flying from the wildly spinning rear wheel, he reached a speed of 338.992 kilometers per hour, and that was a new record. The Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union Dolphin 3 was the first motorcycle to break the 200 mph barrier. This record officially stood until 1962. The planned new Baum 5 was supposed to reach a top speed of about 366 kilometers per hour. But after 1956, Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union also shut down their record-breaking program. The money used for racing and records was needed to produce civilian equipment. So, in 1957, the company returned to car production. That year, the Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union Prince model debuted with a 600cc 20-horsepower engine. New models of civilian motorcycles appeared. In 1954, the Max Special model debuted. A year later, the Sport, Max 250 Racer, and Superlux were introduced. The company's focus was increasingly shifting toward automobiles. The population of Germany and other European countries wanted more comfort from their personal vehicles. A small car was an excellent solution, and by then a fairly large segment of the population could afford to buy a four-wheeled vehicle. These processes caused a crisis in the European motorcycle industry in the late 1950s and early 1960s. At Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union, they were devoted to rotary engines by Felix Wankel, investing heavily in this niche. The new engine layout was viewed as the future of automobile manufacturing. And Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union achieved a certain success by presenting to the public in 1964 the world's first car with a rotary engine, called the Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union Spider. However, this engine had its own drawbacks. Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union was plagued by problems with the engine rotor seals, and they were not resolved, so the car gained a reputation for being unreliable. Who wanted a machine that needed engine work after just 20,000 kilometers? These events further damaged the company's already declining reputation. Motorcycle production continued until 1968. The last mass-produced Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union motorcycle was the Quick 50, which debuted in 1962. In 1969, Volkswagen Werk AG acquired the struggling Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union. The Volkswagen editor merged Auto Union and Neckar-Sulmer Strickmaschinen Union, and that's when the final image of the Audi brand was created. That's how the story of the legendary German motorcycle maker ended. At this point, my story comes to an end. I thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed the material, please don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give it a like and leave a comment. This helps YouTube understand that the story is interesting to the audience. Also, share this video with your friends. This was the Crossmoda channel. See you next time.